cute. I'm gonna grunt the whole way through this.
Hi friends, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be sharing about the birth of this sweet little girl who was born 3 weeks ago, 3 weeks and 2 days. And she is baby number 5 joining our family. We didn't know what her gender was, so that was a fun surprise. And I'm just gonna share about how it all went down, what went the way we had hoped, what went not according to plan, but how it all ended up being okay in the end. She was due, my due date was January 6th, and I have never had a baby that early. I have always had babies a couple days to my baby number 4 was 10 days past my due date. So I fully expected to go at least a week past the due date. In fact, I had a long list of things that I was like looking forward to getting done in that last week that I just hadn't gotten to yet. I had plenty of things to keep me busy, and then my water broke on the day before my due date. So I woke up in the morning, went to the bathroom, came back to bed, and then felt a bit of a gush and realized that's definitely not pee because I just went to the bathroom. So leading up to that, I have had Braxton Hicks, the kind of practice contractions for days, for weeks actually. And just get her started feeding here. Okay, I feel like they started back in like pretty regularly back in like November, which is really normal for me. I don't know if it's just having as many babies as I've had or if it's just the way my body does things, but I notice having Braxton Hicks for a long time and I just don't really think anything of it. And so the day before, so on January 4th, I had noticed that I was having, kind of regular type contractions, but they were really light. They weren't getting longer, stronger, closer together. I wasn't really timing them that much, but I just didn't really, I thought, oh yeah, my body's, getting ready, but this could go on for days and days because it has in the past. And so I have frequently had bouts of, for the last 2 births, bouts of prodromal labor in the last week or so before the baby comes. It won't be 12-hour days of it or nights, but it'll be, 2 or 3 hours and then it'll kind of die off. So I always think of that 2-hour mark as oh, I've got to keep contractions going for more than 2 hours in order for me to have any inkling that this might actually be the real thing. That had happened on January 4th, off and on during the day. By that night, I was pretty tired. And then I got myself to bed, slept pretty good. I mean, for pregnancy, got up to use the toilet a couple times. And then the next morning is when my water broke. It was a little bit dark. It was starting to get daylight, but we didn't have any bright lights. And so we initially checked the liquid that sprinkled all the way across the cottage to the bathroom from my bedroom. And it looked relatively clear. It didn't look like there was anything concerning about it. But then when I changed my pad an hour later, I realized, oh, it's actually kind of tinged a yellowish color, which would indicate that there is meconium in the water. So I texted my midwife and let her know your water breaking without any contractions happening in my mind was not any kind of a major emergency. I just need to notify her. But then when I saw that there was meconium, I messaged her again and said, we need to probably talk about this. So I'll call you if I don't hear from you soon. So she called me and we made a plan to head to the hospital and get a non-stress test, or a CTG is what they call it here. And so we had a bit of a scramble to find some childcare for our younger 2 kids, and the older girls were gonna go with me because they've been really interested in all things pregnancy along the way. I called my chiropractor, was able to get in and get an adjustment with my chiropractor before I went over to the hospital. And my husband, while I was with the chiropractor, went to pick up our birth tub because we were supposed to get it the Friday before, several days before, but there'd been a miscommunication. The place where he went to pick it up wasn't open at the time he went to pick it up. So nothing like the last minute. So we ended up having the CTG. It was fine. It was a little bit initially, there wasn't a ton of heart rate variability, which is what they're looking for. But after a few minutes, it picked right up, and I was on the thing for probably 45, 50 minutes because we were waiting for an OB to come in to do a bedside ultrasound, because I really wanted to know what the baby's position was, just to kind of help support my own physiological like positioning to help the baby get into a good position. And so yeah, the OB came in, recommended that I consider staying in the hospital for the duration of labor and the delivery, but I was having regular contractions, but they were still quite light. They were about every 3 minutes apart, but they were still only about 30 seconds long, and that's also a pretty normal contraction pattern for me. My labors tend to start with contractions pretty short but pretty close together, and then the contraction length just gets longer and longer. The frequency of the contractions ends up staying about the same. So I declined because baby was doing fine, and I just thought, I am not going to quickly get into active labor when I'm here at the hospital, and I'm hungry, I'm ready for some lunch, I'm ready for a bit of a nap. Like, I'd rather just go home and kind of rest. But we knew that, you know, with the water breaking, there was a timeline that I needed to probably just be aware of. And with meconium in the water, we didn't want to stretch it out too long. So I said, you know, I'm going to go home for now. I'm going to move forward with the plans for a home birth, which is what our plan was. But obviously, if I haven't had this baby by, you know, the 24-hour mark of the water breaking, then I need to probably consider coming back in for an additional round of monitoring and possible like labor augmentation and switching the plan to a hospital birth. So yeah, talked about all of that with my midwife. She was good with that plan. So I went home. My midwife had clinic that day, so she went back to meet with the people that she could meet with. I just kind of thought things would pick up in the afternoon, and they didn't. They sort of did, but then they would slow back down, and it was this sort of on again, off again. Contractions would, you know, kind of get a little bit longer if I was up and doing things and doing my abdominal lift and tucks, and then I would lay down and they would get longer and more intense, but then after about an hour, they would kind of space out. And so it was a bit of just an on again, off again. We had people coming and going to, you know, pick up kids and take them to the park and, you know, come and offer help and support around the house. And I think my brain just was a little bit too on. And so I ended up having a phone call with my midwife that evening, about 6 o'clock. And she kind of was like, I would have expected that you would progress a little bit faster than this, given that, you know, you're not a first-time mom, and from the way you were contracting at the hospital, how are you feeling? What are you thinking? And I was like, well, I think I probably just am not quite brain-wise in the right place. So I'm gonna try to work on some good positioning, go for a walk, do some curb walking, try to get this, you know, this head applied to the cervix to get these contractions going, because we knew the baby was head down, lined up well in my pelvis, ROA in terms of position. So we weren't concerned about any major positional problems, but I was like, I think it's probably just a mental or something. So I said, I'm going to work hard till about 9 o'clock tonight, and then I'm going to lay down and try to get some sleep, because I'd taken a short nap, but I was just, that stage of pregnancy, it's hot, it's summertime here, I was tired. And so we did that. My husband and I walked the driveway. Different friends had one set of friends had our 2 girls, and one set of friends had our 2 boys, and everybody kind of ended up coming home about 8 p.m. that night, and my husband got everybody to bed while I got the breast pump set up to try to see if that would help kind of speed things along. And it seemed like it was. Like, the contractions were getting pretty sharp, pretty painful, pretty sharp. They were still about 2 to 3 minutes apart, sometimes 4 minutes apart, lasting, 45, 50 seconds. And so after about an hour and a half of that, I called my midwife and called my friend who was going to kind of serve as a doula. And it was close to 10 o'clock by the time they got here. All the kids were in bed and asleep, and then they got here and everything just slowed down, stretched right out and slowed down. And I was so like, not disheartened. I was just tired. I was just like, I'm tired and I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know if I need to work really hard to try to, walk the driveway again, do all these positional things to try to keep things moving along, or if I just need to surrender to this process. I don't want to force this baby into anything. And if I just need to lay down and take a nap and kind of let things happen. But I was feeling this sense of like a deadline with, knowing that my water had broken. We were still a ways away, but I knew that the 24 hours was going to be coming. And so I didn't want to prolong it too long. So my midwife ended up offering to do a cervical check, which I have not had done since my first baby. I had that done. But every other baby, I have not been around my midwife at all during labor. It's only been in like the last 20 minutes before the baby's born that I've even had a midwife in the room. So I was like, yep, I think I'm not a big fan of them just in practice. I don't feel like if you've had a baby before vaginally, it's not necessarily a great indication of how quickly anything's going to go. But in that case, I guess another reason I'm not a big fan of them is because it can kind of get in your head. Like the mental number can get in your head and you're just discouraged no matter what number it is. But in this case, I was actually hoping it was a relatively small number because I was just tired and I wanted to go to sleep. And I knew if I was like a 5, but not yet in active labor, that it wouldn't take that much to tip me into active labor, and I probably should do that. But I knew if I was like a 1 or a 2, then I could go to bed and get some sleep. So she checked me and I was a 3, and I still had about 1.5 centimeters of cervix left. So I was like, great, everybody go home, get some sleep. Hopefully I'll call you early in the morning, ready to have a baby. Otherwise I will, we'll talk in the morning about heading to the hospital. So I went to sleep, they left, my husband went to sleep, and at about 1:20 in the morning, I got a really good nap, and then about 1:20 in the morning, I woke up, like I kind of came to realizing that I'd had several contractions in the last little bit, and they were kind of pulling me out of sleep. And so 1 o'clock is when my body kicked into labor with baby number 3. It's also when my body kicked into labor with baby number 4. So that seemed pretty on target for me. And I laid in bed and just kind of like let the contractions come, had the timer going, trying to just kind of see, is this the real thing or is this not the real thing? Which in hindsight, I'm like, well, my water was broke. Of course it's going to be the real thing. But I've had so much prodromal labor with other births, and my water's never broken first. It's always come late in the labor process. So I wasn't really thinking about that. So about 1:20 is when I woke up. By 2:30, I was convinced enough that it was probably moving along to wake my husband up and have him start filling up the birth tub. At about 3 o'clock, I didn't feel like there was a huge change in my contraction pattern, other than they were just like the timing of them was about the same, the frequency of them was about the same, but they were getting harder. Like they just felt harder to deal with. So I called my midwife, and I must have sounded pretty chill on the phone, because she was like, well, do you think this is the real thing or not? And to be totally honest, I didn't know. I feel like I never know. And I always feel like I have to get past that 2-hour mark to know if it is the real thing. And so I told her honestly, I was like, I don't know. Like, I think it is, but I don't really know. Do you need some more milk? And so I ended up telling her, how about I call you back in like 20-30 minutes, and we kind of see how the next 20 or 30 minutes go. And she's like, yep, that sounds great. So that's what we plan to do. And then I had a couple relatively hard contractions right after that were like tipping over that 1 minute mark. So I did end up calling my friend, who is a labor and delivery nurse and works at the local birthing center. She doesn't deliver the babies, but she's there to help support the babies after they're born if they need some help kind of transitioning. And she's just an awesome, encouraging person and is great with our kids. And so I had asked her if she'd be willing to come. And so she had come earlier, and that like 10 o'clock the night before, and gone home and gone to bed. And then she didn't hesitate. Like, she heard my voice and she was like, yep, I'm on my way over, which I just thought was kind of fun, because with Thad's birth, she had planned to be there, but she ended up having something that had delayed her a little while, and she didn't make it in time for the birth. So I think she knew in her head, like, when I call her, she needs to come. So she came, and I ended up calling my midwife back about 3:30. From 3 to 3:30 were some pretty tough contractions. And I called my midwife back at 3:30, and I was like, yes, this is the real thing. I want you to come. She's like, okay, I'm on my way. And by then I usually labor early on in labor. I mean, if it's early labor, I try to just ignore it as long as possible. But then once things kind of get more established, I oftentimes have found, especially with like the last 2 births, that I prefer to actually lay down in my bed, because and I kind of get into the Bradley relaxation pose, and that's where I feel like I can actually like visualize relaxing the best. With my earlier births, I mostly did the labors standing up, but I've found, I think that the lying down is more my thing these days. So I had been lying down, and about 3:30 I was just like, I just cannot cope through these contractions lying down anymore. I'm ready to get in the tub. So I got up and came out, and the tub was set up in our living room, and I climbed into the tub, and I remember climbing over the edge of the tub, and I could feel a contraction starting to come on, and you sort of have this like, oh no, it's coming. So I like kind of dropped to my knees, not painfully, but just got down on my hands and knees. And I hate having contractions in a hands and knees position, especially like leaning back. Like if I'm upright, more like a tabletop, where my knees are directly underneath of my hips, that's not so bad. But when I'm kind of like sitting back and just kind of leaning forward with my hands like on top of my knees, oh, it's the worst. Or, just down in front of my knees. And so I had like one really hard contraction in that position, and I just got so grumpy. I was like, I hate doing this. I hate contractions in the tub. I hate this stage. Why am I here? I could have been at the hospital. I could be having an epidural right now. And my husband and our friend, I could hear them like in their responses, like smiling, but like they were really gracious. My husband's like, you're gonna have a baby soon, sweetie. And I was like, am I? I think I'm just stuck in labor forever. And of course, I knew in my head, this is just, transition. We're just hitting it. And so I shifted around a bit in the tub. I find being in the tub is actually not my favorite thing. People say it's like a natural epidural. I've had a real epidural. It does not feel like an epidural, but it is nice. The heat is nice, and it's nice to have like a change of environment to kind of pull out when you need it. And so, yeah, I was in the tub trying to find like a way to be comfortable. And I oftentimes find I'm too buoyant. Like I can't. Oh, it's okay. You ready for a nap? Yeah, Mama's been talking such a long time. You might need to burp too. I feel like I can't anchor myself well. Like I can't, the edges are inflated, and so I can't like grip it super firmly, and I don't like that. But I ended up kind of being like more on my back, and then my husband was kind of at one elbow and our friend was at the other, and I could like hold on to them, and that helped me feel with my feet against the far side of the tub, and that helped me feel like I had a bit more of an anchoring. So I don't know that I necessarily felt the urge to push. I just decided I wanted to be done. And so I started adding some help to the contractions. And I could feel the baby kind of descending and moving down into my pelvis. And so I checked to see if I could feel the baby's head. And sure enough, it wasn't, I wasn't crowning yet, but the baby was very close. So I said to my husband, oh, I know, it's okay. So I said to my husband, if we want our girls to be awake to see this, we need to get them awake now. We need to get them up now. So our friend went to get them up. And as soon as they were in the room, I could feel like that ring of fire feeling. And this time, rather than just pushing through it and not caring, I really was trying to stop. Yeah, I'm talking about your birth. Yeah. I really tried to stop and like pant for like 10, 15 seconds during each contraction, just to slow things down a little bit. And then once the girls were in the room, I was ready to be done. So I did another push. Baby's head came out. I could see where the baby kind of does its like turning thing as you do a second push, and the body came out, and then one final push, and the hips and the legs came out. And so I picked the baby up. We didn't know yet at that time if it was a boy or a girl, but picked her up, picked the baby up, brought her to my chest, and then we just kind of, rubbed her back and blew on her face and talked to her, and got a towel and started to rub her to just kind of stimulate. And she was a bit slow coming around, which is actually pretty common for water births, I've heard. And actually both of my other water births were also just a bit on the slower side. Yeah, once she had come around and started breathing, we ended up calling the midwife. The midwife got there shortly after that, and everything was good. I delivered the placenta a bit after the midwife got there. Baby was doing great. We got her right on my breast to try to get her to latch, because that was one of the things that we'd talked about with my midwife as a plan. If she wasn't there for some reason, she just said try to get the baby on to latch right away to help with some of those like afterbirth contractions to keep the uterus contracting. And so we did that, and it all went really smoothly. I didn't have any tears, didn't need any stitches, didn't have any excessive bleeding. Baby was great. You did such a good job, didn't you? Yeah. So her name is Priscilla Janetta Truth, and we plan to call her Pippa or Pippa Jean. And she was right on the dot at 8 pounds, born the morning of her due date. And she was born about 4 o'clock in the morning, so 4:04, I think. So all total, it was, the hard part of labor was from, 1:30 to 4. And the hardest part of that was from 3:30 to 4. And that was it. And then she was here, and it's been a way different recovery experience to not have stitches. Every other birth I've had either a first or second degree tear, and with my first baby I had a pretty significant episiotomy for the delivery. And so the recovery has been such a breeze. I just feel like I couldn't believe how not swollen and irritated everything was by 24 hours after she was born. So highly recommend that panting thing. I think that probably helped. I've never done that before, and that seemed to make a difference. But yeah, so that is the birth of little Miss Pippa Jean, accidentally unassisted, but of course our friend was there who's very knowledgeable about babies, so I felt perfectly calm and at peace with how things went down. I didn't have any moment of panic whatsoever, and it was just the right people were there, and it all went super smoothly. And then my midwife came in, and she was great. She was like, wow, that was efficient. And so it's been a very lovely postpartum recovery. I'm obviously taking a bit of a break from creating content, just trying to figure out life with these 5 kids, and we have an international move happening in less than 3 months. So we've got to get passports for the baby figured out. Not figured out, but just processed and done. We've done it enough times by now. We know what to do. We just have to make it happen. And then all of the moving details. So I don't know exactly what this year is going to look like in terms of content creation, but I hope that you've enjoyed this birth story. And if you are currently expecting, feel free to drop me a comment and let me know when your baby is due. I'll be thinking of you. And also feel free to check out, I have quite a few posts over on my blog about prepping for birth, prepping for postpartum recovery. I've done a lot of those same strategies this time around with making meals and having an intentional plan to recover. The 5-5-5 rule, and I feel like it's served me really well for the last 3 births. And so I would highly recommend, if you're looking for resources about how best to, kind of optimize your recovery, those would be places that you could go. So feel free to check those out. I'll link them below. And thanks for being here. And I hope your 2026 is off to a fantastic start.
Baby's out. Hi.
404.
Baby's
Hello.
404.
Hello.
Okay. Looking around.
We did it.
We did it. Come here,
Make
Jim.
some noise.
Oh, there you go. How's it doing?
I look like it's sleeping.
I'm doing good. Yeah. Sure. Emily's doing lots of that. I've got a little cry.
Good one. Can you do any more? Can you do any more noises?
Danny seems to be doing. She seems to be doing great. Yeah, but it doesn't seem unreasonable. Yep. She's in the water. She's in the tub. Yeah. Okay. We'll see you soon. Okay. Yeah. Do you see the baby?
Yeah. The midwife.
It's exciting, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you've reached the end of your photo.
Look at those eyes. Oh, yeah. We're gonna see if it's a boy or a girl.
Girls.
It's
It's a little girl.
It's a girl. It's a girl, Laszlo. You have a little sister. What do you think about that? It's a little overwhelming, eh?